Welcome to the latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas. With us tonight, Marilee Rendulich, Thaddeus Polhamus, and Daniel Thomas. Welcome, panel. Where do you see Liz Cheney landing after the November midterm general elections? Thaddeus, how do you see Liz Cheney's future here?
Short answer, out of politics. Sadly, Liz Cheney has become one of those people who is sort of late in the game, but stepping up in favor of the Constitution. A lot of this same stuff happened in 1974 when Nixon was on the dock. Finally, some of the people who had supported him, when the facts started coming out and they really couldn't refute them publicly, they were more or less shamed into going to Congress and going to the courts and telling the truth. And that is, I think, what Cheney has been doing. I've been watching her in these hearings and think that she's doing a great job of upholding the Constitution. So the GOP leadership in Wyoming has eight-balled her. And so it's likely that she will face forcible retirement in November. And I'm sure that she's fully aware of her political exposure and has stuck to her guns about seeing that justice is served. I think that she will be treated better by history than by politics.
Marilee, how do you see Liz Cheney's future?
I think that was well said, Thaddeus. In fact, my understanding is they don't even expect her to win her primary. I think if she could make it to November, she has a better shot. But what I'm understanding is it's so upside down there that she's not going to even win in the primary to run in November. And so her future is, maybe trying to rebuild the GOP as she envisions it. Back channels. I have no idea what really lies ahead, but it doesn't look like it's politics.
I watched the debate of the Republican candidates. There were 3 women and 2 men running for that seat on the Republican, and everyone besides Liz Cheney was all in on stop the steal, and that was that election was stolen, and we need to quit talking about what happened on January 6th. We need to be talking about the price of gas, and so that was what they were all saying. So that said, I'm going to let Dan finish up what he thinks is going to happen to Liz Cheney. Then I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had with my brother about how we see a possible future for Liz Cheney. Go ahead, Dan. Think she has a chance to be relevant anymore?
I think she'll stay relevant, but she won't stay in power. She is going to wind up working for a Republican think tank, just like Paul Ryan is doing, and she might reemerge as a campaign consultant or something, or maybe she'll even rerun for the House seat in 10 years or so when the short American memory has put all of this behind us and we don't talk about it anymore. I do want to say that on the left, we do have a tendency to lionize people who do what we want them to do. We had a lot of heroic respect for John McCain and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins when they saved the Affordable Health Care Act. And I think Liz Cheney is getting a lot of that same kind of credit. These people were kind of voting against the interest of everything on the left for many, many years, and we should not be giving them that kind of credit. In this instance, Liz Cheney is being very principled, and she is sticking up for the Constitution, and she is not willing to sacrifice her integrity at this time to protect a man who almost got her and a bunch of her colleagues killed. I admire her for that because so many of her colleagues do not seem to be able to do that. But at the same time, she has voted to deregulate the EPA. She has voted against marriage equality. She has voted against women's rights. She is the enemy of everything we stand for on the left. Just in this one instance, she is doing the right thing, and she is doing it backwards and in heels, but she is doing it. So I appreciate that she is doing it on the right side in this one particular instance, but that doesn't mean she hasn't been very, very dangerous for the past 20 years.
I just want to jump in here. I couldn't agree with you more, because she's a 96% Trump, voter. And that goes for Adam Kissinger, who still idolizes Ronald Reagan. But the reality is they are actually doing what you expect your Congress people to be doing.
Right.
And the fact that, that there's so few of them. I mean, it's just a tragedy to the entire GOP, and they are really stepping out in front of, to me, a very, it's a self-destructive environment. And I can't say enough about how I admire both her and Adam for doing something that nobody else in their party has the guts to do.
And what is the most sad about that is what they are doing should be the bare minimum standard.
Bare minimum, exactly.
But it is not. And they are sacrificing their careers. Kinzinger's said already that he wasn't going to seek re-election, so he does not care. But Cheney thinks she's going to fight it out.
He dropped out because he was also getting primaried pretty badly, and he had a lot of threats against his family. So I really think the kudos do need to go to them for being the constitutionalists that they are, because otherwise, politically, I couldn't agree with you more, Dan. They're just.
I'll have to agree with both of you that these are not really nice people.
Yeah.
But in this case, when the chips were really down and it looked like, to not do what they're doing would sacrifice American democracy, period. They finally came up and did the right thing on the last day, at the last moment. The same thing with the Secretary of State in Georgia, in that case, who, tried everything that he could to keep Georgia voters from voting. But when the chips were down and the president of the United States called him up and said, can you indent 11,000 votes? He said no, because the Constitution required it. So he finally, on the last day, did what the Constitution required of him. But he did not want to elaborate on that when people tried to get him to talk. So same deal. They're doing what they have to do.
As are all of the witnesses in the public hearings, all Republicans coming out, Johnny come latelys. So let me give you my quick analysis of a phone conversation I had with my brother Chris about Liz Cheney's future. Say Liz Cheney goes ahead and loses the Republican nomination for her seat in Congress, and therefore is unemployed in January. She then has 2 years before the 2024 presidential election. And if Trump is convicted and no longer can run, you're going to have people vying for that Republican nomination. People like Tom Cotton, people like Josh Hawley, people like Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis, all these Trumpers who will split that nut job crazy vote. And it could be that the reasonable Republicans, I hate to use that word, but the ones that are still left voting in the primary could end up giving her enough primary votes if she decides to run for president. That's just, I'm just saying, Liz Cheney chooses to run for president in 2024, she's got a shot.
We should
Okay.
remember that in 2016's Republican primary, Donald Trump never had a majority. He only ever had a plurality because all of the adults in the room, and I use that term very loosely, were splitting that vote. So he collected all the protest votes. So this is not all that far-fetched.
Right. That's what we thought may have happened.
Yeah.
All right, Thaddeus, what's going on inside Trump's head right now as these hearings progress?
Ahem. I have a multiple choice answer. A, being delusional, he is confident that all his acolytes will either gain or retain office in November, paving the way for his 2024 bid for a return engagement on Pennsylvania Avenue. Or B, being a narcissist, he truly believes that he has done nothing wrong and all this mishugas will blow over by November and his agenda will proceed as expected for him thereafter. Or C, deep in his subconscious, he is aware that a life of breaking every rule, bylaw, regulation, law, and commandment of God that he could possibly break is about to finally catch up with him and is considering his options for a sudden move to a country with no mutual extradition treaty with the US. My money says C, should any indictments float his way, especially with an arrest warrant, in which case the officers will find Mar-a-Lago unoccupied.
Okay, Mary Lee, you brought up the Georgia investigation earlier. So what do you see is going through Trump's mind right now?
I actually didn't think anything more than his usual lies and salacious thoughts of his daughter. But I then heard today that he's going to put in an early bid for 2024 so he can access his campaign funds and try to rally up his troops because he knows the indictments are coming. And I think he's trying to avoid Plan C. So
his thought process is, if I announce my candidacy, then I can blame the persecution of me as political.
Well, I think he thinks he can avoid a lot of political repercussions if he becomes a viable candidate. So yes, I mean, it's an argument he's been using all along, and I think that's how he's looking at it again. So it can, try to dissuade legal action against him. But most importantly, it rallies up his people. So.
Okay, Dan, doesn't seem like he's worried at all. At least these first two panelists don't think he's worried too much. Well, Thaddeus kind of Plan C, option C, sort of felt that Morley doesn't seem to think he's worried at all. What do you think?
Oh, I think he had a go bag planned when he started doing his first crimes. There's a nice house in I don't know, the Czech Republic maybe, where he can just disappear to should anything happen. But I think he's doing his usual attempts to discredit things. I've read his, I'm not going to call them what he calls them on his social media platform. So we're going to say his overstock.com tweets about Miss Hutchinson and all the nasty things he said about her since she gave her testimony. He barely knew who she was, but he heard that she was terrible and he personally turned down her request to join his staff, and everything he said to make her seem not credible. But he's hiding behind generic Twitter while she's testifying under oath in Congress. So I think that that's his version of damage control. And he's a rich white man, and they don't face consequences for most things that they do. So he's rattled. I don't know if he's worried, but he's definitely got some notion in his head that there are consequences to face if he doesn't do these things. I'm hoping that, or I think he thinks that if he wins re-election, he'll be immune from prosecution again. He'll get the DOJ to drop the charges because he'll plant a lackey as the attorney general who will just drop said charges. And then if the charges aren't dropped or can't be dropped, he's hoping he'll die in office before he has to face any guilt from them. Because as we learned from watching The Jinx on HBO, if you die before everything is settled, it's just gone. Your legacy is not tarnished anymore.
Okay, I want to thank the panel, Marilee, Thaddeus, Dan. Great discussion, and hopefully our democracy still has a future. Until we tune in next time, all those listeners out there in Cyberland, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.